Tyler Morrison had destroyed the confidence of 8 students at Westfield High School with his cruel fashion attacks. But when he targeted Ethan Miller's thrift store outfit, his sister Maya unleashed a social media campaign that would demolish Tyler's reputation in just 72 hours. By the end of this story, you'll see how creative brilliance can turn public humiliation into devastating justice, and why underestimating the quiet ones is always a fatal mistake. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning mist hung over Oakville, Michigan, as Ethan Miller carefully selected his outfit from the small closet he shared with necessity rather than choice. The 16-year-old junior had learned to find dignity in simplicity, choosing a faded blue sweater his mother had found at Goodwill and dark jeans that had seen better years but still carried themselves with quiet pride. His reflection in the cracked mirror showed a thoughtful face framed by gentle, brown eyes and sandy hair that refused to cooperate despite his best efforts with water and hope. Ethan's morning routine began at 5:30, not by choice, but by circumstance. His mother Linda worked double shifts at Oakville General Hospital, pulling 12-hour days as a nurse's aide before spending weekends cleaning office buildings downtown. The Miller family had learned to measure wealth, not in dollars, but in moments of togetherness, stolen conversations over instant coffee, and the fierce love that bound them, despite their modest circumstances. Their 2-bedroom apartment on Maple Street carried the warmth of a home built on resilience rather than resources. The bus ride to Westfield High School took 23 minutes, during which Ethan occupied himself with library books and careful observation of the world passing by his window. He preferred the back seats where conversation was optional and visibility was minimal, a strategy that had served him well throughout his high school years. Other students filled the seats around him with discussions of weekend parties he wouldn't attend, designer purchases he couldn't afford, and social dramas that felt distant from his reality of part-time work at the local grocery store and homework completed by lamplight. Westfield High School stood like a modern fortress in the heart of Oakville's most affluent neighborhood, its brick facade and manicured grounds reflecting the community's investment in education and appearances. The student parking lot showcased a collection of vehicles that represented more wealth than Ethan's family would see in years. From lifted trucks with custom paint jobs to luxury sedans that whispered rather than roared, Ethan's arrival by bus marked him immediately as different, though he'd grown comfortable with that distinction over the years. Tyler Morrison commanded attention the moment he stepped from his silver BMW, a graduation gift that had cost more than most families spent on rent. 17 years old and blessed with the kind of athletic build that colleges recruited and peers envied, Tyler carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never questioned his place at the top of any hierarchy. His blonde hair was styled to perfection, his clothes bore labels that served as social currency, and his smile could shift from charming to cruel with devastating efficiency. The social ecosystem at Westfield High School operated according to unwritten rules that everyone understood but few questioned. Tyler's position as varsity football captain and son of Morrison, development's owner, placed him at the apex of teenage royalty, surrounded by followers who competed for his attention and feared his disapproval. His crew consisted of Brad Stevens, whose loyalty was purchased with inclusion in Tyler's exclusive circle, Jessica Wong, who documented their activities with professional-grade photography skills, and Derek Phillips, whose role as enforcer ensured that Tyler's will became reality. For 8 months, Tyler had perfected what he privately called his fashion police routine, identifying students whose clothing choices marked them as vulnerable targets for his particular brand of social terrorism. His attacks followed a predictable pattern that began with loud observations about someone's appearance, escalated to public ridicule designed for maximum visibility, and concluded with social media campaigns that ensured the humiliation extended far beyond the initial incident. Tyler's victims included Maria Santos, whose hand-sewn dresses had become objects of mockery until she transferred schools, and Kevin Park, whose secondhand sneakers had inspired weeks of targeted harassment. The psychological precision of Tyler's Attacks revealed a calculated cruelty that extended beyond simple teenage meanness. He studied his targets carefully, identifying the students who lacked the social support networks necessary to defend themselves effectively. His timing was deliberate, often striking during lunch periods or between classes, when maximum audiences could witness the spectacle. The aftermath was equally strategic, with Jessica's photography skills ensuring that moments of humiliation lived forever in the digital realm where teenage reputations were built and destroyed. Ethan Miller had managed to avoid Tyler's attention through careful invisibility, choosing routes through the school that minimized contact with the popular crowds and maintaining a low profile that bordered on transparency. His strategy had worked successfully throughout his sophomore year and most of his junior year, allowing him to focus on his studies and his after-school job without the complications that came with social visibility. Mathematics and literature provided safe harbors where intelligence mattered more than image, and his teachers appreciated the quiet intensity he brought to academic challenges. The morning of October 15th began like any other with Ethan, navigating the crowded hallways of Westfield High School while mentally preparing for his first period chemistry exam. His faded blue sweater and well-worn jeans represented his mother's careful budgeting and his own acceptance of practical choices over fashionable ones. The outfit was clean, presentable, and appropriate for the October weather, though it clearly bore the markers of thrift store origins that trained eyes could identify immediately. Tyler Morrison was holding court near the main staircase, cued entertaining his followers with commentary on the morning's social observations when Ethan appeared in his peripheral vision. Something about the quiet junior's carefully maintained appearance triggered Tyler's predatory instincts. Perhaps the contrast between Ethan's obvious poverty and his refusal to show shame about his circumstances. The decision to attack was instantaneous. Driven by Tyler's need to assert dominance and his crew's expectation of entertainment, the words cut through the morning chatter like a blade designed for maximum damage. "Holy crap, did you guys see what Miller's wearing today?" Tyler's voice carried the perfect pitch of theatrical amazement, loud enough to stop conversations and turn heads throughout the hallway. Students instinctively paused their movement, sensing the electric tension that preceded one of Tyler's performances. I mean, I've seen some tragic fashion choices, but this is next-level poverty chic. Ethan felt his chest tighten as dozens of eyes turned toward him, scanning his outfit with the sudden intensity of spotlights, to contract around him, creating a suffocating arena where his careful invisibility evaporated in seconds. His instinct was to keep walking, to treat Tyler's words as meaningless noise. But the sudden silence from other students made escape impossible without appearing to flee in obvious defeat. Brad Stevens immediately picked up Tyler's cue, his laughter echoing off the lockers with practiced enthusiasm.
Dude.
Is that sweater from this decade? It looks like something my grandfather would wear to rake leaves. The comment triggered a ripple of nervous giggles from students, who understood that participation in Tyler's cruelty was often the price of avoiding becoming targets themselves. Jessica Wong had already retrieved her phone, positioning herself for optimal recording angles while maintaining the appearance of casual observation. Her social media following had grown significantly since she'd started documenting Tyler's various campaigns. And she'd learned to anticipate moments that would generate maximum engagement. The combination of public humiliation and clear class differences created content that her followers consumed with addictive enthusiasm. Tyler stepped closer to Ethan, his designer sneakers squeaking against the polished floor as he closed the distance between predator and prey. Seriously though, Miller, where do you even shop? The lost and found bin, 'cause that sweater looks like it's been lost for about 15 years. His crew erupted in appreciative laughter, their voices creating a chorus of mockery that filled the space between classroom doors. The precision of Tyler's attack revealed months of observation and preparation. He'd noticed Ethan's rotation of thrift store clothing, careful way he maintained his modest wardrobe, and the quiet dignity he carried despite his obvious financial limitations. This wasn't spontaneous cruelty but calculated warfare designed to strip away Ethan's carefully constructed defenses and expose his vulnerability for public consumption. Derek Phillips joined the circle that was forming around Ethan, his bulk creating a physical barrier that made retreat increasingly difficult. "Maybe we should start a charity drive," Derek suggested with mock concern, "to get this kid some clothes that weren't donated by disaster victims." The suggestion prompted another wave of laughter, this time accompanied by the soft clicks of camera phones as students began documenting the spectacle. Ethan's face burned with humiliation as he stood frozen in the center of the expanding circle. His mind raced through possible responses, but every option seemed to lead to greater embarrassment or escalation. Fighting back would only provide Tyler with justification for more aggressive harassment, while remaining silent appeared to confirm his status as an acceptable target for future attacks. The hallway had transformed into an impromptu theater, where Ethan's poverty was being performed for entertainment. Students who might normally ignore both Tyler and Ethan found themselves drawn into the drama, some laughing along to demonstrate their allegiance to the popular crowd, others watching with uncomfortable fascination at the public destruction of someone's dignity. Tyler's confidence grew with each laugh, each phone camera pointed in his direction, each moment that Ethan remained trapped in his carefully constructed web of public shame. "You know what, Miller? I respect the commitment to the homeless aesthetic. It takes real dedication to look this consistently pathetic every single day." The words were delivered with the kind of casual cruelty that Tyler had perfected over months of practice. The chemistry textbook in Ethan's backpack felt suddenly heavy, a reminder of the exam he was supposed to be preparing for instead of enduring this public dissection of his family's financial struggles. His mother's face flashed through his mind. The exhaustion she carried after 16-hour workdays, the careful way she budgeted every dollar to ensure he had what he needed for school. The thought of her sacrifice being mocked for entertainment filled him with a rage that competed with his embarrassment. Jessica's phone captured every angle of Ethan's humiliation, her followers already beginning to engage with the live stream she'd initiated. The comments scrolled past in real time, mixing cruel observations about Ethan's appearance with praise for Tyler's comedic timing. The digital audience expanded the scope of his embarrassment beyond the physical hallway, ensuring that this moment would live forever in the permanent record of social media. Brad Stevens noticed Ethan's hands clenching into fists and immediately moved to position himself between Ethan and Tyler, understanding that any physical response would shift the dynamic in ways that might threaten Tyler's carefully maintained image. "Whoa there, Miller. Don't get violent just because you can't afford decent clothes. That's not our fault you shop at the Salvation Army reject pile." The bell rang for first period, but Tyler showed no intention of ending his performance. If anything, the official start of the school day provided additional urgency to his attack, ensuring that maximum damage would be inflicted before students dispersed to their classes. "Tell you what, Miller," Tyler continued, his voice taking on a tone of mock generosity, "I'll make you a deal. Admit that you dress like a homeless person, and I'll consider not posting pictures of this outfit on every social media platform in existence." Ultimatum hung in the air like a toxic cloud. It's designed to force Ethan into either public self-humiliation or the promise of extended digital harassment. Other students began pulling out their phones, sensing that Tyler's demand might push the situation toward a dramatic conclusion that would provide content for weeks of social media discussion. Ethan's silence stretched beyond uncomfortable into unbearable, creating a tension that seemed to pull oxygen from the hallway. His mind processed the mathematics of his situation with the same analytical precision he applied to chemistry problems, calculating the variables that would determine whether this moment would define him or merely wound him. 200 miles away at Michigan State University, Maya Chen was settling into her morning graphic design class, where her phone buzzed with a notification that would change the trajectory of her entire week. Maya's thumb swiped across the screen, expecting another routine message from her roommate, or perhaps a notification from one of the social media accounts she managed for local businesses. Instead, she found herself staring at a video link forwarded by her friend Rachel with the caption, "Isn't this your little brother?" The preview frame showed Ethan's face surrounded by a crowd of students, his expression frozen in a moment of obvious distress that made Maya's protective instincts flare immediately. The 19-year-old sophomore had inherited her father's analytical mind and her mother's fierce loyalty. a combination that had served her well in her studies and her growing reputation as a social media strategist. Her dorm room reflected her dual nature, with design textbooks stacked alongside marketing analytics printouts and mood boards covering every available wall space. Maya had spent the previous semester building her portfolio by managing Instagram accounts for 3 local restaurants and a boutique clothing store, learning to craft narratives that could shift public perception with surgical precision. The video loaded with agonizing slowness over the university's Wi-Fi network. But Maya's stomach dropped as she recognized the cruel theater unfolding in Westfield High School's hallway. Tyler Morrison's voice carried clearly through her phone speaker, each mocking word about Ethan's thrift store clothing landing like physical blows. She watched her younger brother stand frozen in the center of a circle of smartphones, his dignity being dissected for the entertainment of teenagers who had never questioned where their next meal would come from. Maya's hands trembled as she replayed the video, studying every face in the crowd, memorizing the participants in what she was already categorizing as a coordinated attack on her family. The comments beneath the video revealed the viral trajectory that Tyler had initiated, with students from Westfield High School sharing increasingly cruel observations about Ethan's appearance and speculating about the Miller family's financial situation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Someone had already created a meme featuring Ethan's face with the caption, "Goodwill graduate," and the shares were climbing rapidly. Professor Williams was midway through a lecture on color theory and brand psychology when Maya quietly gathered her materials and slipped from the classroom. The hallway outside felt like a war room where she needed to strategize her response to an attack on the person she cared about most in the world. Her mind was already processing the digital landscape where this battle would be fought, cataloging the tools and techniques she'd learned through months of studying how online narratives could be created, manipulated, and destroyed. The first call went straight to Ethan's voicemail, which Maya expected since phones were prohibited during class hours at Westfield High School. Her message was brief, but loaded with the intensity that her friends recognized as Maya entering what they called her protective sister mode. The second call was to her mother, whose shift at the hospital wouldn't end until evening, but who needed to know that their family was under attack. Linda Miller answered on the third ring, her voice carrying the exhaustion that came from 6 hours into a 12-hour shift. "Maya, honey, is everything okay? You never call during class?" The concern in her mother's voice made Maya's chest tighten with rage at Tyler Morrison and anyone else who thought they could humiliate her family without consequences. Maya's explanation of the situation was clinical and precise, delivered with the same controlled fury that had made her legendary among her high school classmates for defending underdogs against bullies. Linda listened in growing anger as Maya described Tyler's attack and the viral spread of content designed to mock their financial struggles. The silence that followed Maya's summary stretched for nearly 30 seconds before Linda spoke again. "What do you need from me?" Linda's question revealed the steel core that had kept their family functioning through years of financial hardship and single parenthood. She understood immediately that Maya was preparing for war, and that victory would require coordination and resources that extended beyond anger. Maya outlined her preliminary strategy while pacing the length of the dormitory hallway, her mind already 3 steps ahead of the conversation. She needed access to Tyler Morrison's social media accounts, background information on his crew, and detailed intelligence about the social dynamics at Westfield High School. More importantly, she needed time to craft a response that would not only defend Ethan, but establish consequences for Tyler that would discourage future attacks. The conversation with her mother lasted nearly 20 minutes, during which Maya transformed from angry sister to strategic commander. Linda provided crucial intelligence about Tyler's family, including his father's development company and their prominent position in Oakville's business community. The Morrison family's wealth and social status had always insulated Tyler from meaningful consequences, but Maya was already identifying vulnerabilities in their carefully constructed public image. Maya's next call was to her roommate, Jessica Liu, computer science major whose skills with data analysis and digital forensics had proven invaluable during their collaborative projects. Jessica answered while walking between classes, her voice slightly breathless as she navigated the crowded campus pathways. Maya's explanation of the situation was condensed but comprehensive, and Jessica's response was immediate and reassuring. "Send me everything you have," Jessica said without hesitation. "I'll start building profiles on all the participants while you work on the narrative strategy. This Tyler kid has no idea what he's dealing with." The partnership between Maya's creative abilities and Jessica's technical expertise had proven devastatingly effective during their previous semester when they'd exposed a local business owner who was exploiting undocumented workers. The walk back to her dorm room felt like a military march as Maya's mind processed the scope of the campaign she was preparing to launch. Tyler Morrison had chosen to weaponize social media against her brother, apparently unaware that Maya had spent the past year learning to wield the same platforms with professional precision. The irony wasn't lost on her that Tyler's attack would become the foundation for his own destruction. Maya's dorm room transformed into a command center as she spread her materials across every available surface. Her laptop displayed multiple browser windows showing Tyler's Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok accounts, while her tablet streamed the ongoing comments and shares of the original humiliation video. Her notebook filled with preliminary observations about Tyler's digital footprint, revealing patterns of behavior and vulnerabilities that could be exploited with the right strategy. The first phase of Maya's investigation revealed that Tyler's online presence was built on carefully curated images of wealth, athletic achievement, and social dominance. His Instagram account showcased expensive vacations, designer clothing, and exclusive parties that reinforced his position at the top of Westfield High School's social hierarchy. More importantly, his content revealed a pattern of subtle cruelty, disguised as humor with previous posts targeting other students who had apparently crossed him. Jessica arrived 30 minutes later, carrying her own laptop and a thermos of coffee that signaled her preparation for an extended working session. Her analysis of Tyler's digital behavior had already uncovered concerning patterns that extended beyond the attack on Ethan. "This guy has been systematically targeting students for months," Jessica reported while pulling up spreadsheets that tracked Tyler's social media activity. "He's got a whole system for identifying vulnerable kids and then coordinating attacks." Through his follower network, scope of Tyler's campaign became clear as Jessica displayed her findings across Maya's wall-mounted monitor. Tyler had created what amounted to a harassment network that operated through carefully orchestrated social media. Campaigns designed to destroy the reputations of students who challenged his authority or simply annoyed him. The attack on Ethan wasn't an isolated incident, but the latest operation in a systematic program of digital terrorism. Maya studied the evidence with growing fury, recognizing that Tyler's attack on her brother was part of a larger pattern of predatory behavior that had destroyed the social lives of multiple students. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders as she realized that her response would determine not only Ethan's future at Westfield High School, but the safety of every other potential victim in Tyler's crosshairs. "We're not just defending," Ethan, Maya announced to Jessica while opening her most sophisticated design software. "We're ending Tyler Morrison's entire operation." The declaration marked the beginning of what would become the most comprehensive counterattack in Westfield High School's history. Combining Maya's narrative expertise with Jessica's technical abilities to create a campaign that would expose Tyler's cruelty while establishing new consequences for digital harassment. The preparation phase required meticulous attention to detail that would have impressed military strategists. Maya's first priority was understanding the complete ecosystem of Tyler's influence, mapping every connection between his social media presence and the broader network of students who enabled his campaigns. Jessica's forensic analysis revealed that Tyler's power extended far beyond his immediate crew, encompassing dozens of students who shared his content, amplified his messages, and provided him with intelligence about potential targets. Maya's laptop screen filled with detailed profiles of every participant in Tyler's harassment network. Brad Stevens emerged as more than just a loyal follower. His own social media accounts revealing a sophisticated understanding of how to manipulate engagement algorithms to maximize the reach of damaging content, Derek Phillips served as Tyler's physical enforcer, but his digital footprint showed a pattern of coordinating real-world confrontations with online humiliation campaigns. Jessica Wong's role was perhaps the most crucial, her photography skills and editing abilities transforming Tyler's cruelty into polished content that attracted thousands of views. The investigation uncovered a disturbing pattern that extended back nearly 2 years. Tyler's victims included students who had transferred schools, dropped out entirely, or retreated into social isolation that bordered on complete withdrawal from their peer communities. Maria Santos had been driven from Westfield High School after Tyler's campaign convinced half the student body that her handmade dresses were evidence of severe mental illness. Kevin Park's academic performance had plummeted following weeks of harassment about his secondhand athletic equipment, ultimately costing him the scholarship opportunities he'd worked years to earn. Maya documented each case with the precision of a prosecutor building a criminal indictment. Her design background proved invaluable as she created visual timelines that showed the systematic nature of Tyler's attacks, demonstrating how he selected targets, coordinated his crew, and leveraged social media algorithms to maximize psychological damage. The evidence painted a picture of a teenager who had weaponized his privileged position to destroy the lives of classmates who couldn't defend themselves. Jessica's technical analysis revealed vulnerabilities in Tyler's digital security that bordered on reckless overconfidence. His social media accounts used predictable passwords. His privacy settings were configured for maximum visibility rather than protection, and his devices automatically synced across multiple platforms without encryption. More damaging was his habit of documenting his own cruelty, with private group chats containing explicit discussions of targeting strategies and celebration of successful harassment campaigns. The breakthrough came when Jessica discovered Tyler's private Instagram account, a repository of content too cruel for his public persona, but too satisfying for him to delete entirely. The account contained screenshots of his victims' distressed messages, recordings of their emotional responses to his attacks, and detailed plans for future campaigns. Most damaging were the conversations with his crew, where Tyler revealed the calculated psychology behind his choice of targets and timing. Maya's strategic mind processed the intelligence with the same analytical rigor she applied to her marketing coursework. Tyler's greatest strength was also his most exploitable weakness: his need for public validation and social dominance. His entire identity was built on maintaining his position at the top of Westfield High School's hierarchy, which meant that any threat to his reputation would trigger desperate responses that could be anticipated and manipulated. The plan that emerged from their collaboration was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its potential impact. Rather than attacking Tyler directly, Maya would orchestrate a campaign that exposed his systematic cruelty, while simultaneously elevating his victims and transforming the narrative around economic inequality at Westfield High School. The strategy required perfect timing, flawless execution, and the kind of creative brilliance that Maya had been developing through months of studying viral marketing techniques. Phase 1 involved documenting Tyler's entire harassment operation with professional quality presentation materials that would be impossible to dismiss or ignore. Maya's design skills transformed Jessica's raw data into compelling visual narratives that told the story of systematic bullying with the polish of a corporate presentation. Charts showed the correlation between Tyler's attacks and his victims' academic performance. Social withdrawal and mental health struggles, timeline graphics, revealed the calculated nature of his targeting strategies and the coordination required for his campaigns. Maya's investigation into the Morrison family's business interests revealed additional leverage that could be deployed if Tyler escalated his harassment of Ethan. Morrison. Development's success depended heavily on their reputation within Oakville's business community, where prominent families competed to demonstrate their commitment to civic responsibility and charitable giving. The company's marketing materials emphasized their dedication to community development and youth mentorship, claims that would appear hypocritical if their son's systematic bullying became public knowledge. School's administration uncovered a pattern of ignoring digital harassment that bordered on institutional negligence. Principal Hayes had received multiple complaints about Tyler's behavior over the past 2 years. But his family's donations to the athletic program and his father's position on the school board had effectively insulated him from meaningful consequences. The documentation of this administrative failure would become crucial leverage for ensuring that. Maya's revelations resulted in substantive changes rather than superficial responses. The technical infrastructure for Maya's counter-campaign required coordination across multiple platforms and careful timing to maximize impact while minimizing Tyler's ability to respond effectively. Maya created anonymous accounts on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube, each with carefully constructed identities that would appear authentic to different demographic segments within the Westfield High School community. Jessica developed automated systems for coordinating content release across these platforms, ensuring that Tyler would be overwhelmed by simultaneous revelations from multiple directions. Maya's creative process drew inspiration from the most effective viral campaigns she'd studied, combining emotional storytelling with factual documentation to create content that would be impossible to ignore or discredit. Her background in graphic design enabled her to create professional quality materials that would stand out among the amateur content typically shared by high school students. The contrast between her polished presentations and Tyler's crude harassment videos would reinforce the narrative of sophisticated justice confronting primitive cruelty. The psychological component of Maya's strategy was perhaps the most sophisticated element of her campaign. Rather than simply exposing Tyler's behavior, she planned to create a narrative that would make him a social pariah while simultaneously building sympathy for his victims. The content would be designed to trigger shame among students who had participated in or enabled Tyler's harassment, creating social pressure that would isolate him from his support network. Maya's understanding of social media algorithms allowed her to optimize her content for maximum organic reach without relying on paid promotion that could be traced back to her. She studied the posting patterns of Westfield High School students, identifying optimal times for content release and hashtag strategies that would ensure her revelations appeared in the feeds of every student in the district. The technical precision of her approach would make Tyler's unsophisticated harassment campaign appear amateurish by comparison. The final element of Maya's preparation involved creating backup plans for every possible response Tyler might attempt. If he tried to deny his involvement, Maya had documentation that would prove his participation beyond reasonable doubt. He attempted to claim that his harassment was harmless joking. Maya had evidence of the psychological damage he'd inflicted on multiple victims. If he tried to retaliate against Ethan or other students, Maya had leverage that would ensure his family faced consequences that extended far beyond high school social dynamics. Maya's phone rang as she put the finishing touches on her campaign materials, Ethan's name appearing on the screen for the first time since the morning's attack. His voice carried exhaustion and defeat that made Maya's protective instincts flare with renewed intensity. The conversation was brief but crucial, with Ethan providing additional details about Tyler's crew and their patterns of behavior that would enhance Maya's targeting strategy. "Don't worry about any of this anymore," Maya told her brother with the confidence of someone who had spent hours preparing for war. "Tyler Morrison made the biggest mistake of his life when he decided to mess with our family. By Thursday morning, everyone at Westfield High School is going to know exactly who he really is." Thursday morning arrived with the crisp October air that made Michigan autumns feel like fresh starts and second chances. Maya had orchestrated her campaign launch for 7:15 precisely, calculating that students would be checking their phones during the commute to school, but before first-period distractions could dilute the impact of her revelations. Jessica monitored the automated systems from her dorm room, while Maya tracked engagement metrics from her laptop. Watching their carefully constructed narrative spread through Westfield High School's digital ecosystem with viral velocity, the first wave hit Tyler's Instagram followers like a digital tsunami. Professionally produced video opened with a split screen showing Tyler's expensive outfit from the previous day alongside Ethan's thrift store clothing. But the comparison wasn't what viewers expected. Instead of mocking poverty, Maya's narration celebrated the dignity of families who prioritized education over appearances, highlighting Ethan's academic achievements and part-time job while questioning the character of students who equated wealth With worth, Tyler's phone exploded with notifications as he drove his BMW into the Westfield High School parking lot, completely unaware that his social media kingdom was crumbling in real time. The video had accumulated over 2,000 views in 30 minutes, with comment sections filling with students who were discovering Tyler's systematic harassment campaign for the first time. Maya's strategic decision to lead with empathy rather than anger transformed the narrative from revenge to revelation, positioning Tyler as the architect of his own destruction. The second wave targeted Tyler's crew with surgical precision. Brad Stevens discovered that his own participation in harassment campaigns had been documented and analyzed, with Maya's presentation revealing how his algorithmic manipulation had amplified psychological damage to vulnerable students. Jessica Wong found herself confronted with evidence of her role as Tyler's visual propagandist. Her carefully edited content exposed as deliberate weaponization of photography skills against classmates who couldn't defend themselves. Derek Phillips faced perhaps the most damaging revelation as Maya's investigation uncovered his coordination of physical intimidation with online harassment. The documentation showed how his presence had prevented victims from escaping Tyler's attacks, creating the captive audiences that made the humiliation more complete. Students who had feared Derek's physical dominance suddenly understood that his intimidation was part of a calculated system rather than random aggression. Maya's masterstroke came with the release of Tyler's private conversations, where his own words revealed the calculated cruelty behind his public persona. Screenshots showed him strategizing about vulnerable targets, celebrating successful harassment campaigns, and expressing genuine pleasure at the psychological damage he'd inflicted on classmates. The conversations demolished any potential defense that his behavior was harmless joking or adolescent immaturity. The hallways of Westfield High School became theaters of Tyler's social execution as students encountered the revelations on their phones while walking to first period. Conversations stopped mid-sentence as groups gathered around shared screens, processing the systematic nature of harassment they'd previously dismissed as isolated incidents. Students who had laughed along with Tyler's attacks now faced documentation of their complicity in campaigns that had driven classmates from school entirely. Tyler's arrival at his locker became a surreal experience as the social dynamics that had defined his high school experience inverted completely. Students who had competed for his attention now avoided eye contact, their body language broadcasting the social distance they were establishing from his crumbling reputation. The crew that had enabled his harassment campaign scattered like startled animals, each member prioritizing their own reputation over loyalty to their fallen leader. Maya's campaign reached its crescendo when she released the comprehensive timeline showing Tyler's 2-year harassment operation alongside its devastating impact on victims' academic performance, mental health, and social integration. The professional presentation quality made denial impossible, while the emotional testimonials from transfer students created powerful evidence of real-world consequences that extended far beyond temporary embarrassment. Principal Hayes found his morning coffee interrupted by an avalanche of parent phone calls demanding explanations for the systematic harassment that had apparently operated under his administration's nose for years. Maya's documentation of previous complaints and administrative inaction created accountability that extended beyond Tyler to the institutional failures that had enabled his campaign. The school board meeting scheduled for that evening would become a referendum on leadership that tolerated systematic student harassment. Tyler's father received his own devastating revelation when Maya's investigation into Morrison Development became public knowledge. The contrast between the company's marketing claims about community investment and youth mentorship and Tyler's documented harassment campaign created a public relations crisis that threatened business relationships built over decades. Corporate clients who valued social responsibility found themselves questioning their association with a family that had raised a systematic bully. The psychological impact on Tyler was immediate and complete. His identity as social leader dissolved, as former followers publicly distanced themselves from his exposed cruelty. The documentation of his harassment campaign created permanent digital evidence that would follow him through college applications and future social interactions. Maya's strategic decision to use his own words and actions as evidence made him the author of his own destruction. Ethan walked through Westfield High School's hallways, experiencing a transformation that felt like emerging from underwater into fresh air. Students who had witnessed his humiliation now approached him with apologies and expressions of support, understanding that they had witnessed systematic harassment rather than isolated teasing. His thrift store clothing became symbols of dignity and resilience rather than targets for mockery. Maya's campaign achieved something unprecedented in high school social dynamics by completely reversing the power structure that had protected Tyler while victimizing vulnerable students. The systematic exposure of his harassment network created consequences that extended far beyond temporary embarrassment to permanent changes in how Westfield High School addressed digital bullying and economic inequality among students.
The final
message in Maya's campaign appeared on every platform simultaneously at noon, featuring Ethan speaking directly to camera about the difference between wealth and worth, appearance and character. His quiet dignity and articulate defense of every student who had been targeted for their clothing choices created a powerful conclusion to Maya's narrative of justice triumphing over cruelty. Tyler Morrison discovered that social media could destroy reputations as effectively as it could build them, and that underestimating the quiet kids was always a fatal mistake. Maya Chen proved that protective love combined with strategic brilliance could create justice that extended far beyond individual revenge to institutional change that protected future victims from harassment. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.